Hi, my name is Jonas. Ever since I got a Roland Alpha Juno, it was inevitable. At a certain point I had to do a video about early 90s hardcore. In this case I mean the style that has also been called Gabber and that nowadays usually gets called early hardcore. The origin of this genre is the coming together of several sounds. In the early 90s you had Belgian labels like R&S, Music Man and Bonsai releasing tracks that in hindsight had a big influence on the Gabber sound. Tracks like, for example, Joey Beltram, Mantasm, Robert Armani, Hit Hard, Thunderball, Bonsai Channel 1 and many more. On the other side of the channel you had the UK rave sound, which confusingly also gets called hardcore or happy hardcore sometimes, although it's actually a different genre. The UK rave was more focused on fast breakbeats and lots of samples. And then of course you had the German rave scene, which had a big influence as well. All of these sounds came together in Dutch clubs like for example Parkzicht in Rotterdam, where the DJs like Rob and Paul Elstak played these tracks along their own productions that slowly started to get harder and faster. A little bit later, IDT, still a very big Dutch party organizer, started doing their Thunderdome parties, and later on these also became compilation CDs, which sold very well. In the mid-90s, Gabber was a real phenomenon in the Netherlands. You had teenagers shaving their heads, wearing Australian or Cavallo tracksuits and of course Nike Airs. Lots of producers jumped the bandwagon and there were happy hardcore tracks topping the Dutch charts constantly. But these tracks only had a sideways connection to the actual hardcore sound. These were mostly faster Eurodance, which just borrowed some elements here and there from the Gabber sound. The real hardcore sound was about hard and fast 909 kicks, lots of samples from 80s and 90s movies and hip-hop with lots of profanity, drugs, violence and horror elements. Certainly not radio-friendly music at all. But enough history for now, let's create a hardcore track. Let's start with the Roland Alpha Juno, which is basically the rave synth. Using the stereo pin controller, I'm going to create the typical PWM-based Hoover sound. To make this sound less static, I'm going to sweep an EQ through the mid and high frequencies. This is something I cannot do directly on the Alpha Juno because I need a notch filter for it and the Alpha Juno only has a high pass and low pass filter. Back in the days the producer would do this as well, using the EQ on their mixer and just basically doing that during the recording live. And now the kick. Most of the early hardcore uses the TR-909, so I'm going to use the 909 kit from the TR-8S. The kick needs to be distorted in a controlled way. The usual method for this back in the days was using your mixer and then increasing the gain on the channel quite a lot and then slowly fading in the kick until the desired sound was achieved. I'm going to be a bit more adventurous though and use the MS-20 external signal processor. I will patch the kick signal into the VCO mixer with the actual oscillators turned down and then trigger the VCA with the trigger out of the external signal processor. This turns the MS-20 into a nice and dirty analog mixer that is easy to overdrive in a very satisfying way. As a bonus, we get the dual filter here as well and can have some fun shaping the kick sound. this can be used later in the track. This effect can also be achieved by sweeping through a regular EQ on your mixer, and this is something that has been done quite a lot back in the day as well. One of the most famous examples is The Name of the DJ by Chosen Few. Now let's add the rest of the drum sounds. Next, a classic rave element, the aim break. I put it in the QA sampler track, reduced the bitrate to make it sound like an old school Akai sampler, and then I created this pattern. Now let's combine this with the TR-909 and the Alpha Juno. For the second part of the track, I'm going to use another rave classic. It's the A Beginning sample from the Roland S-50. I'm going to combine it with another choir rave step that I created myself for an earlier video, and that one was based on O Fortuna from Cammina Burana. I will combine these two to play this pattern. Now some vocal elements. A very typical thing for these old school Gabber tracks was sampling from old school hip hop or movies. When I was creating this video, I remembered that back in the 90s, me as a teenager who wanted to be a hardcore producer actually recorded an interesting part from the 1994 Street Fighter movie. Well, I had to basically rewatch most of this early 90s cheese fest completely to finally find it again, and this is what I got.
You raving lunatic! Raving lunatic!
And to make it match the tempo of the track, and because it's basically a typical rave thing to do, I'm going to play it pitched up.
Raving lunatic!
I'm going to use it in the track like this.
Raving lunatic!
Perfect for this track. And as a final element, I'm going to use this DHS House of God-like distorted square synth. For the occasion, I created it on the Jupiter XM, but I just as well could have used the Alpha Juno because it's basically a square through a distortion. Before checking out the final result, let's talk about the sponsor of this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. There are classes available on all kinds of topics like synthesizers and music production, but also graphic design, web development, video, photography, and much more. I have been watching Young Guru's class about mixing music. It's very interesting to see his take on the art of getting a collection of separate tracks and make them come together in a great mixdown. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning, meaning there are no ads to distract you, and they're always launching new premium classes, so you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. The first 1000 of my subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare, so you can start exploring your creativity today. So now all the elements are there. I don't really need anything else because we have a high BPM and sounds that occupy a lot of the spectrum, so there is basically no room. Building these tracks can be done in several different ways, but playing with contrast and fast cuts works especially well in this genre. So now let's check out the final result. And that's it again for today. If you want more like this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to be notified as soon as a new video goes online, click the bell button. Bye bye.